Hello, Ami. This is Jin. I don't even know where to begin. My heart feels so full tonight. For years, I only dared to dream of this moment, to imagine standing beside someone who truly understands me. And now, that dream has come true. I'm officially married to IU. Just saying those words feels surreal. She's been my comfort, my light, my home. Today, I'm not just smiling. I'm glowing with a happiness I can't put into words. Thank you for being with me through every chapter, and now for witnessing the happiest day of my life. I want to take you back, not just to the moment she said yes, but to everything that led us here. Because this story, our story, isn't just about love. It's about patience, growth, and believing in something even when the world tells you it's impossible. I first met IU years ago, backstage at an awards show. I remember the exact moment she was standing near the curtain, humming softly to herself. Her voice was like a breeze in spring, gentle but impossible to ignore. I didn't approach her that night. I was too shy, too caught up in the whirlwind of cameras and rehearsals. But something about her stayed with me. It wasn't just her talent, it was her presence. She had this quiet strength, this calm that made everything around her feel less chaotic. Over the years, we crossed paths more often. Industry events, music shows, award ceremonies. We'd exchange polite greetings, sometimes a smile, sometimes a nod. But I always felt like there was a wall between us, one built by fame, schedules, and the fear of misinterpretation. I admired her from afar, like so many others did. But for me, it was different. It wasn't just admiration, it was longing. I remember one night after a long rehearsal with BTS, I sat alone in my room and watched one of IU's live performances. She sang through the night, and I swear, it felt like she was singing directly to me. I cried, not because I was sad, but because I felt understood. Her voice carried emotions I couldn't express, and in that moment, I realized something. I didn't just want to know her, I wanted to be known by her. But I didn't act on it. I told myself it was just a crush, just admiration. I buried the feeling, focused on my music, my group, my responsibilities. Still, every time I saw her, my heart would race. I'd rehearse conversations in my head, imagine scenarios where we talk, laugh, maybe even share a meal. But reality was always quieter. A wave, a smile, and then she'd be gone. Then came the turning point. It was a charity event one where both of us were invited to perform. I was nervous, not because of the stage, but because I knew she'd be there. I told myself to be professional, to focus on the music, but fate had other plans. After our performances, we ended up seated next to each other at dinner. And for the first time, we talked, really talked. She asked me about my favorite books. I told her I loved fantasy novels, especially ones with flawed heroes. She smiled and said she liked stories that made her cry. We laughed, we shared stories. And in that moment, the wall between us began to crumble. From that night on, things changed. We started texting, just casually at first, song recommendations, funny memes, random thoughts. But slowly, those messages became deeper. We talked about our fears, our dreams, the pressure of being in the spotlight. She told me she often felt lonely, even in a room full of people. I told her I understood, that I felt the same. We became each other's safe space. And that, Ami, is where love truly begins, not in grand gestures, but in quiet understanding. I remember the night I realized I was in love with her. It wasn't dramatic. We were on a video call, both in pajamas, both tired from long days. She was talking about a song she was working on, and I was just listening. And then she paused, looked at me and said, "You make me feel like I can breathe." That was it. That was the moment. I knew I wanted to be the person who made her feel safe, always. But even then, I hesitated. I didn't want to risk our friendship. I didn't want to scare her away. So I waited. I waited until I was sure, until I knew she felt the same. And then one rainy evening, I asked her to meet me. No cameras, no stylists, just us. I took her to a quiet rooftop in Seoul, one where you could see the city lights but still hear your own heartbeat. I told her everything. How I'd admired her for years. How she made me feel seen. How I wanted to build a life with her. She didn't speak right away. She just looked at me, eyes glistening with tears. And then she said, "I've been waiting for you to say that." I cried, she cried, and in that moment, the world faded. It was just us. From that day on, we were no longer just Jin and IU. We were us. The journey wasn't always easy. We had to be careful, had to protect what we had. But every stolen moment, every whispered, "I love you," made it worth it. And then came the proposal. I planned it for months. I wanted it to be perfect. Not flashy, not loud, just meaningful. I took her back to that rooftop, the one where it all began. I decorated it with fairy lights, her favorite flowers, and a small table with handwritten letters from me. When she arrived, she smiled, already knowing what was coming. I got down on one knee, heart pounding, hands shaking. I told her, "You've been my light in every dark moment. Will you be my forever?" She didn't hesitate. She said yes. And I swear the stars above us danced. That night, I felt like the luckiest man alive. And today, as I stand beside her, as her husband, I know I am. This is just the beginning, Army. There's so much more I want to share about our journey, our challenges, our laughter, our tears. So stay with me because the love story of Jin and IU has only just begun. You know, Army, falling in love is easy, but protecting that love, that's the real challenge. Especially when you live under a microscope, when every glance, every word, every breath could become tomorrow's headline. After IU said yes to being mine, we knew we had to be careful. Not because we were ashamed, never that, but because we wanted to build something real before the world got involved. We became masters of subtlety, a shared playlist, a matching bracelet hidden under sleeves, a lyric that only she would understand. It was like we were writing love letters in code and only we could read them. And honestly, that made it even more special. There were nights when I'd finish a concert drenched in sweat and adrenaline and sneak away just to hear her voice. We'd talk about everything and nothing. She'd ask me how my shoulders felt after dancing, and I'd ask her what she ate for dinner. It was simple. It was quiet. It was us. But even in those peaceful moments, there was fear. Fear that someone would find out, that our love would be twisted into something it wasn't, that the world would try to tear us apart before we even had a chance to grow. We'd seen it happen to others, rumors, invasions, heartbreak. We didn't want that. So we made a pact, protect each other at all costs. I remember one time during a variety show taping, the host asked me about my ideal type. I smiled and said, Someone who sings like the moon and listens like the stars. IU texted me later that night and said, "So I'm your galaxy now?" I laughed so hard I nearly dropped my phone. That's the kind of love we had, playful, poetic, full of inside jokes. But it wasn't always easy. There were moments of doubt, times when we questioned if we were being selfish, if hiding meant we weren't being true to ourselves. I'd lie awake at night, staring at the ceiling, wondering if I was doing the right thing. And then I'd get a message from her, "I'm proud of us." Just 4 words, but they'd calm every storm inside me. We found ways to be together without being seen. Private studios, late night walks in quiet neighborhoods. Sometimes we just sit in the car, parked in a secluded spot, listening to music and holding hands. No cameras, no fans, just 2 people in love. And then came the moment that changed everything. It was IU's birthday. I wanted to do something special, something unforgettable. So I wrote her a song. Not for release, not for charts, just for her. I called it Moonlight Letters. It was raw, honest, full of every emotion I'd ever felt for her. I recorded it in secret, burned it onto a CD, and gave it to her wrapped in a simple envelope. She cried when she heard it, not because it was sad, but because it was real. She told me it was the most beautiful gift she'd ever received. And in that moment, I knew we were ready. Ready to stop hiding. Ready to share our truth. But how do you tell the world something so personal? How do you open your heart without losing yourself? We decided to do it slowly. A hint in an interview, a shared look on stage, a lyric that mirrored her poetry. And then, one day, she posted a photo of a moon bracelet, the one I gave her, no caption, no explanation. But the fans knew, they felt it. And instead of backlash, we received love, messages of support, comments like, "We've always known," and "You deserve happiness." It was overwhelming, beautiful, healing. That night, we sat on the same rooftop where I proposed and watched the city lights flicker like stars. She leaned her head on my shoulder and whispered, "They love us." And I whispered back, "Because we love each other." We knew the road ahead wouldn't be perfect. There would be noise, distractions, opinions, but we also knew we had something stronger each other. We started appearing together more often, not as idols, but as partners. We attended a charity gala hand in hand. We collaborated on a song that spoke of quiet love. We even did a joint interview where she looked at me and said, "He's my peace." I couldn't stop smiling. And then came the wedding planning. We wanted it to be intimate, not a spectacle. Just family, close friends, and the people who had truly supported us. We chose a venue surrounded by cherry blossoms, her favorite. I designed the invitations myself with tiny illustrations of moons and stars. She picked the menu filled with comfort food and warm desserts. Every detail was a reflection of us. On the day of the wedding, I stood in front of the mirror, adjusting my tie, heart racing. I wasn't nervous, I was overwhelmed. Because I knew that in just a few hours, I'd be calling her my wife. When she walked down the aisle, everything else disappeared. The music, the guests, the flowers, it all faded. All I saw was her, radiant, graceful, mine. We exchanged vows under the soft glow of lanterns. I told her, "You've been my song, my silence, my sunrise. I promise to love you in every language, in every lifetime." She smiled and said, "And I promise to be your moon even when the night feels endless. We kissed, and the world cheered. After the ceremony, we danced. Not a choreographed routine, just us swaying to a melody only we could hear. She laughed when I stepped on her foot. I laughed when she tried to twirl me. It was messy. It was perfect. And now, here we are, married, united, free. Army, I want you to know something. This love story isn't just mine. It's yours too. Because you believed in me. You supported me. You gave me the courage to be honest. And for that, I'll be forever grateful. IU and I are building a life filled with music, laughter, and quiet mornings. We're writing songs together, cooking together, dreaming together, and every day I wake up and thank the universe for her. This is just the beginning. There's so much more to tell about our first trip as a married couple, about the song we're releasing together, about the way she makes me laugh when I'm stressed. So stay with me, Army, because the love story of Jin and IU is only getting brighter. Army, I still wake up and reach out just to make sure she's really there. That this isn't some beautiful dream I'll wake up from. But every morning, she's beside me, her hair messy, her eyes sleepy, her smile soft. And I think to myself, this is it. This is what forever feels like. The days after our wedding were quiet, peaceful. We didn't rush off to a honeymoon or post 1,000 pictures. We just existed together. We stayed in a cozy little house tucked away in the countryside, surrounded by trees and silence. No cameras, no schedules, just us. IU, my wife, my love, woke up early every morning and made tea. She'd hum while she stirred, sometimes singing little melodies she hadn't written down yet. I'd sit at the table watching her, feeling like the luckiest man alive. We didn't need words. The silence between us was warm. One morning, she handed me a notebook. On the cover, she'd written, "Our first chapter." Inside were pages filled with her thoughts, her sketches, her dreams for our life together. She'd drawn a tiny version of me holding a guitar, and beside me, a cartoon IU with a microphone. Underneath, she'd written, "Let's sing through life together." I cried. Again. I know I cry a lot, but when you waited this long for something so pure, every emotion feels like a gift. We spent our first week as husband and wife doing the simplest things, cooking together, reading books, watching old movies. She introduced me to her favorite dramas, and I introduced her to my favorite anime. We argued playfully over which character was better, and she always won. I let her win. Okay, sometimes. One night, we built a blanket fort in the living room. Just like kids, we filled it with pillows, snacks, and fairy lights. Inside, we talked about everything, our childhoods, our fears, our hopes. She told me she used to write love songs for someone she hadn't met yet. I told her I used to imagine what it would feel like to hold someone's hand and know it was forever. Then she reached out and held mine. And I knew. We also started writing music together, not for release, just for us. She'd play a few chords and I'd hum a melody. Sometimes we'd record it on her phone, sometimes we'd just let it live in the moment. One song we wrote was called Quiet Fire. It was about how love doesn't always roar, it sometimes flickers softly, but it never dies. She said that's how she felt about me, that I was her quiet fire. I remember one afternoon, we went for a walk in the woods. The air was crisp, the leaves golden. She wore a scarf I'd knitted for her. Yes, I knit, don't laugh. and she held my arm like we were the only two people in the world. We found a small stream and sat by it, watching the water flow. She leaned her head on my shoulder and said, "I don't need anything else." That's when I realized happiness isn't loud. It's not flashing lights or screaming fans. It's moments like that. A stream, a scarf, a shared silence. But even in our little bubble, we knew the world was waiting. Our fans, our families, our careers. We couldn't stay hidden forever. And honestly, we didn't want to. We wanted to share our joy, not as a spectacle, but as a celebration. So we planned a small reveal, a joint post, a photo of our hands intertwined with our wedding bands visible. No faces, no captions, just love. The response was overwhelming. Messages poured in from all over the world. Fans saying they'd always hoped, that they'd always seen the way we looked at each other, that they were happy for us. IU cried when she read the comments. She kept saying, "They're so kind, they really love us." And I said, "Of course they do, because they've always loved you, and now they love us." We decided to do a live stream, just a short one, to say thank you. We sat side by side, nervous but excited. I held her hand under the table the whole time. We talked about our journey, our music, our dreams. And then at the end, I looked at her and said, "I'm proud to be your husband." Yeah, she smiled and said, "And I'm proud to be your wife." The chat exploded. Hearts, tears, congratulations. It felt like the whole world was hugging us. After the stream, we sat in silence for a while, just holding each other, and then she whispered, "We did it." Yes, we did. Army, I want you to know something. Love isn't perfect. It's not always easy. But when it's real, when it's built on trust, respect, and quiet moments, it's the most powerful thing in the world. IU and I are building a life that's ours. A life filled with music, laughter, and late night ramen. We're planning a small concert together. Just acoustic, just raw, just us. We want to sing to you, not as idols, but as two people who found each other in the chaos. And every time I look at her, I think, thank you. Thank you for saying yes. Thank you for choosing me. Thank you for being my home. This is just the beginning, Army. There's so much more to share about our first trip together, about the song she wrote for me, about the way she makes me feel like I'm enough. So stay with me, because the love story of Jin and IU is still unfolding. Army, if you've ever traveled with someone you love, you know it's not just about the destination. It's about the little things, the way they pack their bag, the songs they play in the car, the way they look out the window like they're dreaming. Our first trip as husband and wife wasn't extravagant. It wasn't a luxury escape or a 5-star resort. It was something better. It was real. We went to Jeju Island, just the two of us. No staff, no managers, no schedules. We booked a small cottage near the coast, surrounded by wildflowers and the sound of waves. IU had always said she felt most at peace near the ocean, and I wanted her to feel that peace every second we were together. The morning we left, she wore a hoodie that was way too big for her mind, obviously, and carried a tiny backpack with just the essentials: her journal, her camera, and snacks. I had a suitcase packed with clothes I probably didn't need, but hey, I like options. We drove ourselves. No van, no driver. Just us and the open road. She made a playlist for the right songs that reminded her of us. Ballads, acoustic tracks, even a few BTS songs she secretly loved but never admitted to until now. When Epiphany came on, she turned to me and said, "This song made me fall for you." I nearly swerved off the road. We sang. We laughed. We stopped at roadside cafes and tried random dishes. She made me eat something called seaweed pancakes, and I pretended to love it. Okay, I didn't pretend that well. She caught me grimacing and laughed so hard she cried. When we arrived at the cottage, the sun was setting. The sky was painted in shades of orange and pink, and the air smelled like salt and flowers. She ran ahead, arms wide, spinning like a child. I watched her, heart full, thinking, this is the woman I get to spend my life with. Inside, the cottage was simple. Wooden floors, soft lighting, a fireplace. She unpacked her camera and immediately started taking photos of the curtains, the mugs, even my socks. She said, "I want to remember everything." That night, we sat on the porch wrapped in blankets, sipping tea and listening to the waves. She leaned her head on my shoulder and whispered, "I feel safe with you." I didn't say anything. I just kissed her forehead and held her tighter. The next few days were magical. We explored the island like locals. We hiked trails, visited waterfalls, and ate at tiny restaurants where no one recognized us. We danced in the rain, literally. One afternoon, it started pouring while we were walking through a field, and instead of running for cover, she grabbed my hands and said, "Dance with me." So we did, soaked, laughing, spinning like we were in a movie. We also wrote music. She brought her guitar and I brought my notebook. One morning, we sat by the window and wrote a song called Island Hearts. It was about finding love in unexpected places, about how even the quietest moments can be the loudest in your heart. We haven't released it. Maybe we never will. Maybe it's just for us. One evening, we climbed a hill to watch the sunset. She set up her camera and took a photo of us from behind our silhouettes against the sky. Later, she printed it and wrote on the back, "This is what love looks like." I keep that photo in my wallet. But it wasn't all perfect. We had our first married argument too, over something silly, whether to take the coastal road or the mountain road. She wanted views. I wanted speed. We bickered. She pouted. I sulked. And then 5 minutes later, we both burst out laughing. She said, "We're ridiculous." I said, "We are perfect." That's the thing about love. It's not about never fighting. It's about knowing that even when you do, you're still on the same team. On our last night, we sat by the fireplace, wrapped in one blanket, watching old videos on her phone. She showed me clips of her early performances, her first fan meetings, her awkward interviews. I showed her mine too. We laughed at our younger selves, cringed at our fashion choices, and marveled at how far we'd come. Then she looked at me and said, "I'm glad we didn't meet back then. I wouldn't have been ready, but now I am." I nodded. Me too. We left Jeju with hearts fuller than when we arrived. And as we drove back, she held my hand the entire way. No words, just warmth. Army, I want you to know this trip wasn't just a vacation. It was a promise. A promise to keep choosing each other every day. To find joy in the ordinary. To build a life not just of music and fame, but of quiet mornings and shared sunsets. IU is my partner, my muse, my best friend, and every moment with her feels like a song I never want to end. There's so much more to tell. About the surprise she planned for me, about the way she supports my dreams, about how we're learning to grow together. So stay with me, because the love story of Jin and IU is still being written. ARMY, I've sung thousands of songs in my life. On stages, in studios, in hotel rooms, in cars, but nothing prepared me for the moment IU sang the song she wrote for me. It wasn't just music, it was a confession, a love letter, a mirror reflecting everything we'd been through. It happened one quiet evening, a few weeks after our trip to Jeju. We were back home, curled up on the couch, surrounded by half-eaten snacks and unfinished books. She'd been working on something in secret, humming melodies under her breath, scribbling lyrics in her journal. I didn't ask. I wanted her to share it when she was ready. And then, that night, she said, I have something for you. She walked over to the piano, sat down, and took a deep breath. Her fingers hovered above the keys, and then she played. The melody was soft, almost fragile, like it was afraid to be heard. And then she sang. The first line was, you waited for me in silence, while the world was loud around us. I froze. Her voice, so familiar, yet suddenly so new, carried every emotion we'd ever felt. The lyrics spoke of our hidden moments, our quiet promises, the way we found each other in the chaos. She sang about the rooftop where I proposed, the blanket fort we built, the way I held her hand during storms. And then came the chorus. You are my moonlight shelter, my safe place when I break. You are the song I never wrote, but always heard in my heart. I cried. Again, I know, I cry a lot, but this was different. This was her soul laid bare for me. When she finished, she looked up, eyes shimmering. Do you like it? She asked, voice barely above a whisper. I couldn't speak. I just walked over, pulled her into my arms, and held her for a long time. And then I whispered, it's the most beautiful thing I've ever heard. We sat there, wrapped in silence, letting the song linger in the air. I asked her what she was going to do with it. She said, nothing. It's yours. It's not for the world. It's for us. But I couldn't keep it to myself. Not entirely. So we made a decision. We'd record a version together. Just one take. No edits. No production. Just raw emotion. We set up a mic in our living room, dimmed the lights, and sang. Her voice led, mine followed. It was imperfect, but it was real. We shared a snippet on social media, just 30 seconds. No title, no context. And the response, wow. Fans flooded the comments with tears, hearts, and messages like, this feels like love. And I've never heard Jin sound like this before. That's because I'd never sung like that before. Not with my heart completely open. IU told me later that writing the song was her way of saying thank you for waiting, for believing, for loving her when she didn't know how to love herself. I told her she didn't have to thank me, that loving her was the easiest thing I'd ever done. We started writing more after that. Not for albums, not for charts, just for us. We'd sit by the window, watching the rain, and write about the way it sounded. We'd write about the way her tea smelled in the morning, the way my laugh echoed in the hallway, the way our shadows danced on the wall when the lights were low. One song we wrote was called 2 Cups. It was about how love is found in the smallest things like making tea for someone without asking how they take it. because you already know. Another was called First Snow. It was about the first winter we spent together, walking hand in hand through the city, watching the world turn white. We haven't released any of them. Maybe we never will. Maybe they're just for us, but they're real and they're ours. Army, I want you to know something. Love isn't just grand gestures and dramatic moments. It's songs written in secret. It's melodies hummed in the dark. It's lyrics that say, I see you, I hear you, I love you. IU sees me, she hears me, she loves me, and I love her more than words can say. There's so much more to share about the way she supports my dreams, about the surprise she planned for our anniversary, about how we're learning to grow not just as artists, but as people. So stay with me. Because the love story of Jin and IU is still singing. Army, I thought I knew everything about IU. Her habits, her quirks, her favorite foods, the way she folds her socks. But she still finds ways to surprise me. And this surprise was something I'll never forget. It was our first anniversary. I had planned something simple, a quiet dinner at home, candles, music, maybe a handwritten letter. I didn't want anything flashy. I just wanted her. But IU, she had other plans. That morning she woke me up with breakfast in bed. Pancakes shaped like hearts, strawberries cut into little stars, and tea with a note that said, "Today is not what you think." I raised an eyebrow. She just smiled and said, "Wear something comfortable. We're going on a trip." I was confused. A trip? Where? How? We hadn't booked anything. Our schedules were tight, but she insisted. So I got dressed, grabbed my jacket, and followed her out the door. We drove for hours, through winding roads, past sleepy towns, into the countryside. She refused to tell me where we were going. Every time I asked, she'd just say, "Trust me." And I did. Eventually, we arrived at a small village nestled between mountains and rivers. It was quiet, untouched, almost magical. She parked the car, took my hand, and led me down a narrow path lined with lanterns. At the end of the path was a wooden gate. She opened it, and I gasped. Inside there was a garden, not just any garden. It was filled with cherry blossoms, her favorite, and moonflowers, mine. There were fairy lights strung between trees, soft music playing from hidden speakers, and a table set for two under a canopy of stars. I turned to her, speechless. She smiled and said, "Welcome to our anniversary concert." I laughed. "Concert?" She nodded. "Just for you." She walked over to a small stage. Yes, she built a stage and picked up her guitar. Then she began to sing. The first song was Island Hearts, the one we wrote together in Jeju. But this time she added new lyrics. Lyrics about our first year together, about the way I make her laugh, about the way she feels safe in my arms. I sat there, heart pounding, eyes wet, completely overwhelmed. Then she invited me to join her. I walked up, took the mic, and sang with her. We sang Two Cups, First Snow, and even a new song she'd written called Forever Starts Here. It was about how love isn't just a feeling, it's a choice. A choice to stay, to grow, to believe. After the concert, she handed me a box. Inside was a scrapbook, page after page of photos, notes, ticket stubs, and tiny drawings. She documented our entire year together. Every moment, every memory, On the last page, she wrote, 1 year down, forever to go. Thank you for being my moonlight shelter. I couldn't speak. I just hugged her tight and whispered, you are my forever. We spent the night in a small cabin nearby. No phones, no distractions, just us. We talked about our dreams, our fears, our plans. She told me she wanted to write a children's book. I told her I wanted to open a ramen shop someday. We laughed. We dreamt. We loved. The next morning, we walked through the village, hand in hand. Locals smiled at us, offered us tea, asked us to sing. We did. Just a few lines, just enough to make them smile. On the drive back, she rested her head on my shoulder and said, I wanted to show you how much you mean to me. I said, you show me every day. Army, I want you to know love is in the details, in the surprises, in the effort. IU didn't have to plan all that, but she did, because she loves me, and I love her more than I ever thought possible. There's so much more to share about how we support each other's careers, about the challenges we face, about the way we keep choosing each other every single day. So stay with me, because the love story of Jin and IU is still blooming. Army, when you love someone, you don't just hold their hand, you hold their dreams too. You protect them, nurture the